little bit about how I got the idea for this holiday. Well, I've been calling it a holiday. I think I texted Ken like sometime in late November, and I was just like, I think I'm gonna start a holiday. And Ken was like, cool, I'm in. And that was that. And so we are sponsored by the Literary Managers and Dramaturgs of the Americas, LMDA. And I want to give a special thanks to Sarah Freeman, who is here today, Cindy Sorrell, who is here today, Brian Quirt, who is on live stream. Hello, Brian in Canada. And of course, Mark Bly should stand up. Mark was really instrumental in helping find just people who wanted to invest in this project, which I'm so excited about. So thank you, Mark, Ken, everyone. Thank you for having this, having the support for this. Cool. We have a HowlRound live stream going on, so hello to the camera. And thank you to Liana, Transcend Streaming, for doing our filming. And we're here at the beautiful National Opera Center. So, I think that's everything for my introduction. So, the first panel is going to be Ken Cerniglia. Yes, come. Thank you. We'll go behind the table.
Okay,
we will go behind the table, where my books and cough drops are.
Oh, your books are?
Yes.
Cool.
Have a seat.
It's not just me,
and then, no, it's not.
Okay.
Amy.
Yes.
Amy Marie. Amy Marie Seidel.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hello.
Okay, we have our first panelist, and then we also are going to have Yasmin Zacaria Mikhaiel joining us on Zoom.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the logo
Obie.
will become Yasmin soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh! Welcome, Yasmin! Okay.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. We'll have to
Split.
wait.
Yeah, so split
Let's
around.
split
Yeah.
center.
Okay, great.
Let me just get my notes. So a little bit about this first panel. So this is our love letter to current collaborations. So the idea for the holiday is I really wanted, like LMDA always throws incredible conferences for dramaturgs to attend and meet each other. And I was really passionate about the idea of having an event that targeted perhaps everyone, like theater makers of all disciplines, and wanting to encourage everyone to come in the room and celebrate collaboration. So this is our love letter from dramaturgs to the New York theatrical community and by extension, the theater community in the camera. Yes, so current collaborations, Ken Cerniglia working on Hadestown has been running for 6 years. Dramaturg for Hadestown. That's a big accomplishment. And then also, he opened Redwood on Broadway 2 days ago. Dramaturg for Redwood on Broadway. Adina Menzel.
Yes, Adina Menzel.
Adina Menzel. Tina Landau.
Tina Landau. Yes.
Yes.
Amazing.
And then Yasmin, you worked on English at the Goodman Theatre, and you were the production dramaturg for English. And then for this current production at Roundabout, you worked as a cultural consultant. So Yasmin's going to talk about those and how those dramaturgical skills informed both of those roles. And then Amy Marie Seidel is the Tectonic Theater Project company dramaturg. And she's going to talk about Here There Are Blueberries, which is doing its international tour right now. They just finished up the McCarter Theater, and now you're going to the West.
We're going to the West Coast.
West Coast.
Wallace in LA and Berkeley Repertory Theater.
So cool.
Amazing. And they can come to you. Just contact.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have
Tectonic-
your people call my people.
Moment work. I have the book right here.
I will say, since you held up the book, we do have the co-author of the book here
Yes.
to support me right now, Barbara Pitts McAdams.
Thank you for being here. Okay.
Good nerdy fun.
Yeah.
Yay! Okay, let's get started. Ken. Let's talk about where you began and how you have come to now advise Idina Menzel to be halfway up a tree on Broadway.
Where I began, like, in life, like,
Yeah.
born in,
Whatever you
I was born
want.
in Los Angeles, and
Los Angeles.
yeah, St. Joseph's Hospital, Burbank, California.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How did you get into theater?
I got into theater as a kid in sort of like a church choir, doing like plays, a little bit in high school, but really it was in college. I went to UC San Diego, which has a pretty well-established theater and dance department, and I got involved more in that after study abroad in Barcelona, came back. Did more theater and got a job at La Jolla Playhouse. I was there and saw everything that they did and loved it. I was a psych major, theater minor, then stayed longer, finished a theater major, and then pursued graduate school in theater in Washington, D.C. and Seattle. And I was going to be a theater professor. That was my whole intent. Wrote a big, long dissertation on performance of ethnicity on the American stage in the 19th century. But I was got involved in dramaturgy when I was in my master's program in D.C. I did an internship at Arena Stage, so I was there for a whole season. Working in the literary office, and I dramaturged 2 shows, an old play and a new play, so got a little bit of
old and new
each, and worked on performance guides there and talkbacks, the whole shebang, but really got my training as an apprentice, essentially, with working with other dramaturgs and directors, and just like up there as production dramaturg, like, okay, now I have to really do it. And so developed that skill set, really liked it, and then continued to do it both in university settings and in small theater in the places that I lived. And I went to I got involved in LMDA when I was in graduate school in Seattle. I went to my first conference in 1999 in Tacoma, Washington, at University of Puget Sound, hosted by Jeff Prohl there, and then every job I've had ever since has been through connections with LMDA. So that was just part of, whether it was teaching or went to another conference in 2003 and met up with another dramaturg there who I'd worked with at La Jolla Playhouse, who was then working for Disney Theatrical, and said, I have an associate job open, would you apply for it? And I said, no, I have no interest in working for Disney.
But we've got a mouse on this clock, perhaps. I bought this clock beforehand, and it's perhaps a mouse or a bear.
It could be. It's a mouse bear.
Mouse bear.
And so I learned to open up my my field of vision there, and in fact, like I did maybe want to work a little bit because Julie Taymor had directed The Lion King, and I found that very interesting. Sort of this high art meets something that's actually paying the bills. With ticket sales. So I'm like, well, that's interesting. Let me, have a few more meetings.
And that kind of theater reaches so many people of like young ages too. For
sure. And also there was like I think it's just my natural philosophy in the world about like widening a welcome. It's like everyone's like a big tent idea that I sort of grew up with in terms of what inclusion meant. And there was something that Disney was trying to do in theater of reading like the widest possible audience with the highest possible quality theater. That was interesting to me. And so I applied for the job, and then I went from like not really any interest because I love living in Seattle and doing what I was doing, to like a little bit of interest, to a lot of interest, and then kind of wanting the job. And then I got the job, and I was going to
move to New York.
I was going to do it for a couple of years and go back to academia, and then 16 years later, I was still making theater with Disney, and actually having a really good time doing it and working on plays for young performers and plays on Broadway, and also plays internationally, which I'd also had, speaking more than one language and traveling around the world. I was like, I can do that. Yes, I can do that too. I'll supervise international translations. So that became like a fun thing to do too. But also then, I didn't have an expertise in musical theater, and that is why I went to like graduate school again, essentially, working for Disney and really learning how musicals worked and the dramaturgy of them and building them, and adaptations, of course, but then also building new plays, and so developed that skill set over time. And I'm still freelancing because that was always the thing that I did. You gotta I love all kinds of theater, eclectic taste. And so while I love the musical theater, it's a tiny little theater company that did site-specific, historically based work. And one of the projects I worked on was Hadestown, which was like this tiny, vibey,
way down
underground. You sort of arrive when you go to like a Jinx Monsoon concert at Carnegie Hall. And in the second act, she opens it up with Our Lady of the Underground. And I was like, oh, I guess we've arrived, right? Like when one of the most famous drag queens in the world is performing a song from Hadestown at her Carnegie Hall concert debut. So that was fun. But,
and now Redwood.
And yeah, so I my career at Disney ended
and I want to say
16 years. Yeah.
I want to say the first thing I think I said to Ken was I played Ursula in The Little Mermaid in high school. That was my
yes, you did.
that we got coffee at the drama bookshop and I'm like, I'm really excited to meet you. I love The Little Mermaid. The first play I wrote is about The Little Mermaid. And also Eurydice and Orpheus. Yeah. So I was very excited to meet Ken, and he was so gracious and very.
It was really
very
exciting because I did the book adaptation of The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Did you do the full show?
We did Junior.
You did Junior. Yeah, I did Junior. So
Younger generation players.
Younger generation
2013.
players. No, it was good. We had like the tentacles and his characters.
Yes, I had a great costume.
Super fun, right? To be able to work on plays that reach a wide audience, which is always sort of the thing that I thought would be cool to have that kind of impact. It was a great privilege, and so I wanted to also do other things. So Hadestown was one of those things that I was doing freelance, and then when it went to Canada and it went to London and then it came to Broadway around the same time, I'm like, maybe I'll explore other freelance work. And so I ended my time at Disney with a lot of love New York City, love Disney. And then went full time as a freelancer. And so one of the projects that came to me in the past year was Redwood. They'd launched a production back at La Jolla Playhouse, old stomping grounds, where I've been a couple other times working professionally, and I happened to miss it. And so I knew one of the producers and the general manager. I'm like, how's it going? They're like, great, we have but there's more work to do. Would you take a look at it? And so I looked at the video. I'm like, this is fantastic. Like, I love the story. I love Redwoods. I'm from California. I'm like, I'm in. Is there any way that I can help? They're like, well, we'll see. Because we've got, Tina Landau, who does everything, self-professed, she wants to do everything. Right. But like wrote the whole play, directed the thing, co-wrote the lyrics, like genius, like a genius human being. And I'm also like, but you're also doing so many things at once. Like, how do you have time? She makes the time.
Hello, Tina.
But no, she's completely amazing. And actually, she'd never worked with a dramaturg before. Yeah. All of that time, she'd been doing dramaturgy, obviously, right? Devising work, everything, creating it, directing a ton of things, but hadn't spent too much time writing. I mean, obviously, had written Floyd Collins a long time ago, and is going to rehearsal for that on Tuesday, because you can't do enough things at once.
Next door to the library for the performing arts.
But was really interested in diving back into writing, have an opportunity to write this whole play, also coming out of a very personal loss for her. Yeah. So it was like really intimate, and writing the thing, and also directing it, high concept, like lots of video, climbing up a tree. So many things, so ambitious.
I'm so excited to see it. I hope you can get me in.
So I'll get you in. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think the ambition of it, and also I was like, oh, here's a project like that all of the genius, all the spirit is there, and I think this just might be a place where some dramaturgical support would help get you to the next level.
Right.
So I pitched that to Eva, and it's not. I'm like, everything's there. Just needs some structure.
And right? Dramaturgical support in what sense?
So some of it was structure, like really diving into. There's 5 characters in the show, and so when we first met, I just asked him like, so what does this character represent? What does this character represent? Because they all had different stories as human beings. So I'm like, as characters in a character structure, what do they represent sort of thematically, generationally, all of these things, which she sort of knew but hadn't had that kind of conversation about. So we had that, and she asked me a lot of questions, I asked a lot, and like actually from someone who hasn't worked with it before, was like a little skeptical, right? And then she's like, "This is great. Can we have another meeting?" I'm like, "Sure." And we were, started our collaboration on Zoom. I was in Arkansas at the time, and she was like, "We're trying to work through this." And then we just, kept meeting, and then we had a reading together, and she and Kate Diaz, who's a young
Hello,
composer. Kate's amazing, and this is her theater debut and Broadway debut. Working on Redwood, and so after a few conversations, she and Kate went and they threw out 5 songs and wrote 6 new ones, all of which were better, and not that the old songs were bad, but they all served the story better. They were all doing more dramaturgical work in the show, and so I was like, wow, this is great. It was all everything they turned around was so wonderful. And I'd worked on Hadestown for 5 years, 4.5 years before we reached Broadway.
Right.
This one was it's already slated to come to Broadway.
Very
I
fast.
started working on it in June. I'm like,
you gotta climb that tree.
Yeah, climb the tree, and we're quite quickly. But they just kept turning out new drafts, so I think we got a lot of work done in a short amount of time. Also, too, trying to achieve major. Ambitious production and trying to achieve that. So I learned a lot. Every time you work with new collaborators, well, how do I dramaturg with this artist, with these
person.
artists,
Yeah.
and on this project? And it
Right.
takes time to learn what, particularly an ambitious new piece, what the dramaturgy of that is.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me 5 years to learn what the dramaturgy of Hadestown was.
Well, and
I
also
didn't even
the
know.
fun of that specific collaboration, the love of that specific collaboration.
Yeah, and how it works and when it works, individual artist psychologies and, the developing new work and where does the audience fit in and all of that. So it's hugely exciting to be able to work on and send a new piece out into the world and see how it works and see how audiences interact with it.
Yeah.
So that
Why,
was,
why do you think audiences will love it? Love NYC Dramaturgs. We're promoting Redwood.
Event? Yes, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I think it's a very open-hearted and ambitious and vulnerable work. So I think when audiences are connecting with it, they're appreciating what the artists in a very vulnerable place, all trying new things.
Yeah.
All of our primary 3 artists who'd created Redwood, Idina Menzel, Tina Landau, and Kate Diaz, what they're bringing to the work that is still finding itself. Still, as we open on Broadway, still finding itself, making discoveries every day. And so I appreciated that about it. You get to a certain point in your career, I want to do things that I haven't done before. This is nuts, right? And so let's do it. But it was also beautiful. I saw the heart in it, and I wanted to work on that. And share my love for something that a story they were trying to tell, and bring that to the collaboration, and hopefully support it in a way and bring it forward.
Yeah. Amazing. Everyone, Ken Cerniglia. Go see Redwood. Maybe stream Hadestown some.
Oh yeah, Hadestown is being live captured in London in a couple of weeks. I'll go next Thursday.
Yay! Great. Okay, we are going to move on to our screen.
Sweet.
Yasmin. Hello, Yasmin.
Hi, friend. Good to be with y'all virtually here.
Yes, Yasmin is joining from Chicago. Yasmin, let me turn my page to you. Okay, I want to give us a little bit of your background, because you are Chicago-based, and you flew to NYC a couple weeks ago, but you are primarily Chicago-based, but you could work anywhere, really, remotely. Anyone can work anywhere.
It's so true in this age. I am joking that I'm cosplaying as a New York dramaturg. My background, definitely home base is in Chicago, where I grew up in and around the city. My dramaturgy lore is that I was a cherub at the Northwestern Program for the Arts, which is a wild 5-week experience where 150 high school juniors, 10 of them stage managers, are producing their plays for the first, working on plays for the first time. And so my background was actually first in technical theater, which I think is hilarious because I am so bad at math in the cliche way. Unless it's about money. Money, we can figure it out for contracts. But I was building sets, doing stage management, and then there was a mini masterclass that Kate Leahy was teaching, and I was like, whoa, dramaturgy is a thing. And so when I was 16, I learned about it. So I feel like I had a pretty early upswing into that career, because at the time there were only 2 undergraduate programs in dramaturgy, even though as an 18-year-old majoring in dramaturgy, like, what? Why is that an option? But how cool that it was. And so I went to the theater school at DePaul University for my BFA in dramaturgy and dramatic criticism. And full circle, I teach there now, which is really lovely. I haven't been able to kick academia yet like Ken, but I'm obsessed with students teaching dramatic literature, Chicago theater history. I'm also a curriculum consultant in a way, doing a lot of post-mortem facilitations with students, thinking about the ways that their current production practices can feel better for them and for future students. So a lot of my work, I'm thinking about it from like a care lens. How do we build space that is brave and courageous? And I was also coming up in Chicago around 2019 as a theater critic, with curiosity around how we can write about our colleagues in ways that are more generous and are really looking at the knowledge gaps that we have as writers. My kind of central question is, what would it mean for a theater critic to look at themselves and reflect in the same vigorous, interesting ways that they do for people that are on stage? And that really looks at your own undoing your unconscious bias as a person, having cultural competency for folks that are outside of your own cultures, and being reflexive, which is what is reflection in action, in a sense of what happens if something you write lands poorly on a certain population or people. How are you brave enough to maybe address that, and what can that look like? And I became really curious about critics that maybe don't talk about the criticism they regret or that is harmful sometimes. And so that led me to graduate school at UT Austin, where I kind of looked at possibility models for more abundant ways of writing on people and facilitating in the room. I'm generally a new play dramaturg, even though I would prefer to work on locked scripts, but the new play, some like queer family drama is usually what finds me. So that's kind of been my pathway. I started grad school 6 months before the pandemic, and so that led me to, it felt like the universe was telling me get out of Texas. And so I finished my master's, went back to Chicago, and immediately somehow started adjuncting. I'm a full-time marketing girly by day in newsrooms across Chicago. So I was working for a weekly paper, and kind of embracing that freelance lifestyle, even though I didn't know what that meant for me, working across museums, foundations, theater, of course. But it was because people didn't necessarily know what dramaturgy was. I could spin it into whatever they needed. Right. Like, that has always been kind of my game of like figuring out, how does dramaturgy serve you, your institution, your collaborators.
Amazing. What a great introduction. And then with English, I'm going to give a brief history of English, and you correct me if I'm wrong, please. So English by Sanaz Toossi started at the Atlantic Theater 2022, and then Pulitzer Prize for Drama 2023. And then it went to the Goodman, where Yasmin was the production dramaturg. So for someone who doesn't know what a production dramaturg is versus a new play development dramaturg, what does that look like?
For sure. I think some of the process is similar, except for a traditional production dramaturg, we can consider the script locked. So no matter what's happening on the page, we can't change that. And so it's usually through the different styles of like the directorial vision, or even what the actors bring to the play itself, is what makes the tenor of the play land differently, I would say. And so formally, my duties were also about audience engagement. How is this play going to land on an audience? And so the materials that maybe are a crossover between new play dramaturgy and traditional are your actor packet. What are the one-to-one things that your team needs to know or maybe would want to know about the time of the play, the world, politically, globally, what's happening in that moment. For a play as gorgeous as English, with its specificity and like Iranian culture, there were just touch points of like movement work, protests that would be really lovely for folks to have in the space, even music and movies, just like being that kind of researcher in the space as well. and knowing that like the play in its sense, since it is locked, I don't have to have a hand on this maybe structure parts and big brain parts that maybe Ken was working on and these other, like I don't have to worry about the play and the text of itself changing, but what I'm doing is like augmenting people's experiences potentially, and doing a lot of engagement like pre-show, talks with the director or post-show facilitations, just a lot of like programming. More of my energy is like working on materials that are supplementary to the play itself. And of course, still being in the room, observing, giving notes, being that third eye as well.
Yeah. And then how do we lead into Roundabout on Broadway? Because that was a different role entirely.
For sure, and totally disconnected from my work at the Goodman. And so the English was programmed at the Goodman before it had won the Pulitzer, so there wasn't necessarily a sense of what this play could mean for this moment or the accolades that were coming. The Goodman show was done in co-production with the Guthrie, which is really gorgeous when we're thinking about the power of that story right now of folks in their own country learning English to have opportunities elsewhere. And it was a highly produced play even before the Pulitzer. And a lot of my work as a dramaturg is specifically on Middle Eastern stories, Swana stories, and how beautiful in the last 5 years that can be a majority of the work I do. And so I've gained competencies not just within my lived experience as an Iranian person in diaspora, but also generally as someone who is learning alongside my friends and collaborators, because our stories and our culture is not a monolith. Right. Even if I am working on other stories that are Iraqi or Lebanese, there's a certain cultural competency that I learn on every project I take on. And as a dramaturg, I think I'm very smart in the ways that I talk about my work and write about it and document myself, because so much of what we do for other people falls between the cracks. And so I really like pointing to my portfolio as a way of saying like, hey, here are all of the ways that I can work with someone on different projects, and I'm very attuned to being responsive when I have time to work, in a sense. And so Roundabout found me through a recommendation of North Theatre Company based in New York. And it's so beautiful to think about. You don't know who's saying your name in what rooms. You don't know what collaboration is going to springboard you into the next. And so it's funny that I do have a connection to Sivan Batat, who directed Layalina at the Goodman. At the Goodman, I was on their new stages production, which is just like plays in progress. And then we were able to get a full production of Layalina the following year. Sivan works at Noor. When Roundabout went to Noor as their partner, asking nationally who could do the work of some cultural competency in dramaturgy, I'm grateful that my name was brought, and Yay! It's something that Roundabout had been thinking about for that kind of role. And just to give a little more context too, my role for Roundabout was not connected to what y'all are going to see on stage if you are lucky to get some tickets to English, but it was kind of an unprecedented contract in a sense of I was asked to do trainings for their front of house, their back of house folks, and their admin, because they wanted the staff who would be welcoming audiences to the theater and those that are ambassadors of this play to have a really solid understanding of what it means to be an Iranian and how to welcome an Iranian audience or Middle Eastern folks. Mm-hmm. And so my trainings were very much maybe a degree removed from what you would consider a traditional dramaturgy project, but it was utilizing the skills of dramaturgy, that kind of care work, the careful facilitation, the research, what do these folks in my audience need to know with me right now. And so they Roundabout engaged me in early November, and I was working on trainings that would be live in person at Roundabout, because a lot of this kind of sensitivity work around culture is pretty personal, and just lands better when we're actually like breathing and talking with each other, even though there is opportunity to do some of this training virtually. And what I actually appreciate is the 2 trainings I did kind of had different audiences. So again, those dramaturgy tools of who do I have in my space and how do I change the information or how I'm delivering it to them depending on who's in the space. So my first day of facilitation was very much for ushers, some of the teaching artists, and thinking about, again, Iranian History 101, some of that unconscious bias unlearning, wonders around how to make theater feel more accessible to folks in the way that we're welcoming, like literally welcoming people, because there's maybe 10 different touch points when someone walks into a theater that can immediately turn them off of their experience. It starts from the box office to going to security to coat check. And so really thinking about that full experience, that arc of what folks are coming through into the theater. My second day consulting as in that way was a hybrid Zoom with like 50 teaching artists, while I also had some admin staff in the conference room with me. And then after that engagement, they wanted to do another recorded session because there was just a lot of appreciation and value that they saw in having someone with the knowledge of this play from a dramaturgical perspective, the cultural sensitivity, and of course I made them a one sheet of my citations, and so people had the resources they were able to go back to. Because even if I know on my heart that Iranian people are everywhere, like the Middle Eastern experience as we think about it in this day and age, we're fighting so many stereotypes, oppression, Muslim bans, which is what this play came out of as well. And so for me to think about what is someone's first engagement with this play and how they're going to engage with audiences was just a super fruitful collaboration, and I think pretty unprecedented for Broadway to be thinking about it, like theater experiences in this way of how do we not microaggress our audiences? How do we make it a welcoming space, especially for a play on Broadway that has all Iranians specifically, and our stories that are able to live in like joy and abundance sometimes too.
Yes. What an incredible answer. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. I was really excited when I learned that you were involved with the Roundabout production in a different way, because I was excited to hear about that difference. And just because I think that this play is so important to you could go read it, you could go see it. If you can get a ticket, you can see it. But you could also read it, and it's a great experience for an audience. So
thank you so much.
Okay, and we're gonna go a little over time because we started a little late, and I'm not the best with time. I'm sorry. I'm really bad with time, but I do have my bear clock.
Bear clock.
So now we are going to go to Amy Marie Seidel of Tectonic Theater Project.
Also, I just want to say before we move on, if you have not seen English on Broadway, it is one of the most moving, powerful, brilliantly staged, all of the design elements. It's one of my favorite things I've seen recently. So if you haven't had a chance, please do go see it.
Seconded.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it's gorgeous.
Fantastic.
All the
Love
forms
it.
that they use as well are so innovative, simple, and gorgeous.
It's a beautiful play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Tectonic Theater Project.
Yes.
I've been a mega fan for so long.
Me too.
Like, when I went to college, my friend Ashley is here, and she will attest that I was always like, everyone should read this one.
Yeah.
This book. Yes, Barbara Pitts McAdams. I read it all the time. So I want to hear a little bit about how you got involved in Tectonic Theater Project, because it's a fun little story.
It is a fun little story. So just like probably all of you, I did the Laramie Project when I was a senior at NYU. I was studying musical theater performance, 8:30 a.m. tap dance, the whole thing. And I played most of Amanda Gronich's characters, who's sitting right here. Stand up, say hi, Amanda. Original Tectonic Company member and co-writer with Moisés Kaufman of Here There Are Blueberries.
Yay!
You see how much we love each other in this company. We literally can't stay away from each other. We just went to Sephora before this and had a little bit of fun.
Yes!
Good way.
But anyway, long story short, I was in the Laramie Project when I was a senior in college. Coming from small town Georgia, I did not realize that you could interview people, then create a play communally together, and then be in that play and share it out in the world. And that is what Tectonic had done with the Laramie Project, and it blew my mind, my ever-loving mind. I tried to figure out a way to work with Tectonic right away after school. I wrote them, they never responded. And then eventually I had a friend who was an intern at the company and said, oh, we need a PA for Moisés Kaufman, the artistic director of the company, for our gala. Can you do that? I'm like, okay, sure, what's a PA? What do you do? They're like, mostly like copies and coffee. I was like, that I can absolutely do. And
Yes,
they're like,
coffee.
Copies. I was like, okay. They're like, you're competent, let's do this. I'm on my way to the first rehearsal and I get a text from Moisés Kaufman, who I had never met. And he says, hi, I'm going to be 90 minutes late. Can you please start rehearsal? And I said, yes, absolutely, I can do that, yes. And so, first of all, I didn't know what we were rehearsing other than it was a gala. So I walk into the room. It is a one-on-one rehearsal with Zach Grenier, who I had only recognized from The Good Wife. And so I went in here, oh, you must be the associate director. Yes, that is me, the associate director. Certainly not the associate director. And I said, what are we working on? He said, 33 Variations. I said, yes, certainly a play I have read and definitely know. I had not read it. I didn't know that's what we were working on.
Mark Bly was a dramaturg.
Yes, in fact, he was. I have since seen and read it, and it is an excellent play. But in that moment, I had not. And so I basically just BS'd with Zach for 90 minutes, and we listened. We had a live pianist with us, and we listened to the 33 Variations and the music, and we allowed ourselves to cry about it and feel about it and see what it did to our bodies for 90 minutes. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And Moisés came in and actually started working on the scene that we were supposed to be working on. And then when Zach finally left the room, he goes, you're a very promising young director. I can't wait to see more of your work. I was like, yes, director. Sure, that's what I guess
Yes.
I am. And so that gives you a really good idea of my entire career with Tectonic Theater Project. So I came in, I was a PA. As far as Moisés knew, the best thing that I did was bring a portable charger for his cell phone. Highly recommend. And then so he kept on asking me back into the room. As PA a couple times, and then I naturally started researching. I was just insatiable in my curiosity, and so I was in a room for Treatment and Data, which is a project we're working on about the HIV and AIDS epidemic and the activists around that world in the 80s and 90s. And he started asking questions. When did this happen? When did that happen? Who was there for this? Do we have any text about this? And I started just naturally falling into the person who made the timeline and the person who had the answer, who could find through all of our hundreds of hours of interviews the text when somebody had it about this or about that. And then so the next thing he said to me was, Amy, will you actually dramaturg this workshop of Treatment and Data? And I said, yes, absolutely will do. What is a dramaturg? And so I pretty much learned on the job, was dramaturg, still am dramaturg on that piece. The next thing he asked me to do was to be dramaturg on Here There Are Blueberries, which Amanda is here, co-writer of. And from there, not just dramaturg, but also, you have all the institutional knowledge of all of these interviews. Can you put together the first version of this scene? Can you devise this scene? So then I became deviser on one project, associate writer on another project, associate director for him on Paradise Square, Here There Are Blueberries, and among many others. And I did that thing where I sort of weaseled my way into the company, and now I am also a moment work teacher for the company, our process of devising. And they kind of, I just kind of wouldn't let them let me go. Does that answer the question?
It does.
Great.
I'm pulling up my next question
Okay,
for you. It's a very, very good answer to the question. As far as moment work, if someone doesn't really know what that entails, what does that mean?
Yeah, so moment work is Tectonic Theater Project's process of devising theater, meaning that we always make our plays in a really communal fashion. We usually start, in the case of most of the plays that I've worked with the company, with interviews. So we have hundreds of hours of interviews that we've collected. We have historical documents. We have photographs, for instance, and here there are Blueberries. We just have this plethora of information that we have this just database of. And so what devising is coming together and making something of theater. It's pretty basic, but there are a million ways to do this. And so moment work does it in a way where from go, we have everything in the room. Okay, we have this interview. How do we make that theatrical from go? We have props, costumes, lighting, all in the room because we don't believe that narrative is just told with the text on the page. Light can tell just as much story as text can. And if you introduce that from go into your piece, then you'll actually be amazed by what text you might not need. And that text can just inform the piece itself rather than the text has to tell the whole story, which sometimes in American theater we rely so much on the text to tell the story that we don't use all of the other beautiful modalities that the stage uniquely has to tell that story. In Blueberries, for example,
Yes.
one of our first workshops that we did was with all of our devisers and all of our designers at the same time. So we had, some of Broadway's best lighting projection designers in the room. So I was able to say, for this moment, I'm actually really curious about creating Rudolf Höss's backyard with all of the projections that we have. And David Mingali, our wonderful projections designer, was like, oh yeah, we can do that. And he projection mapped in about 5 minutes, just a concept that I had about like sort of putting the guard tower here and the, just these little bits from the backyard and creating this world. And I wouldn't have had that expertise, but because we brought together all of these people, we were able to do that in the room. The same workshop, David Landau, our wonderful lighting designer, Moisés was curious about these tables, these drafting tables that end up flipping up and being used as projection surfaces during the show. And David Landau said, hold on, and he just quietly walked up to one of them and duct taped 4 tube lights to it. So it created a frame around this wood drafting table that we were working with. And then we were like, whoa, what does that do? What does that do when an actor stands up there and we uplight them in blue? And then we start creating these modalities and these rules of our stage, which actually every time we uplight an actor in blue, that means that they are part of the past world. We don't want to change costume for every single character when each actor is playing 8 characters. How do we do that otherwise? This lighting can actually help us. And so as dramaturg, I was also working with David Landau the whole time, not only on, developing the piece with Amanda and Moisés, but also figuring out these rules of our production and how we can communicate these things in new, interesting, but clear ways.
And if you could talk about traveling to do the interviews.
Yes. So, over many years, we did many interviews with Holocaust historians, some of the world's foremost experts, including, for instance, David Marwell, who's the world's foremost expert on Joseph Mengele, who actually unearthed Joseph Mengele's bones and diaries and decoded them. And so we've become friends with all of these wonderful historians. I mean, I really have them on speed dial, and I've actually been asked to do some freelance research for them as well when they're writing their books and stuff, and it's become this amazing relationship. And so part of that was going to Poland and Germany to interview not only these amazing historians, but also we interviewed the children and grandchildren of high-powered Nazis who are depicted in the photo album that Here There Are Blueberries is based on. And we had some conversations I will never forget, including with Peter Wirtz, who is in his 80s and was really grappling with the culpability of his father for the first time in front of us. He never felt like he could express that, and so we got to watch that firsthand. We also got a private tour of the camp, Auschwitz 1 and 2. And the thing that will always stick with me, Amanda was by my side that whole time, and just looking at her now is going to make me tear up because we were holding each other's hands going through that very visceral experience. But the first thing I noticed was that it was beautiful. The grass was growing, wildflowers everywhere, wild cats pouncing on little animals, birds flying above. And at first it made us almost upset. Like, how dare they, in light of everything that has happened there? And then there was this sort of moment of release into the fact that even the most horrific thing that you can imagine humanity can do, there is still something greater than that. Mother Nature and the world, she still grows there. Mm-hmm. That's still, after all of this horror, there was still hope for that land. And so putting my feet on that land, feeling the horror deep within, but feeling the growth afterwards, it actually changed my idea about dramaturgy. And now every time I work on something, I insist that I go to where that thing happened. Because I think standing on the ground and having that embodied dramaturgy, it changed my life. So, yeah.
That's incredible. I think I would like to ask, just like your collaboration with Tectonic Theater Project is just so loving and caring. Do you just want to speak a little bit about just the nature of that as a dramaturg? It's maybe a little bit, maybe we don't see it all the time, that the dramaturg is always present in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very unconventional in that, myself and Matt Jocelyn, our creative producer, we're kind of the two support systems for Moisés and Amanda, who are the primary writers on the piece. And I don't think we had barely any writers' meetings where the four of us weren't present, which is very unconventional. I don't think there's been a single rehearsal that I wasn't present for in the whole 8 years of developing that piece since I was brought on in 2018. And it really, I think it speaks to the way that we create, which is very communally, and I think it speaks to the spirit that our company has, which people say this, but it is really just a beautiful, loving, passionate, dysfunctional family. Seriously, you should see Moisés, Matt, Amanda, and myself right down to the middle of previews and for the tour, right? We've done 900 productions of this by now, and we're over our salmon at lunch being this but should be an and, or else the whole scene doesn't work, And we really are just so deeply passionate. Moisés's favorite line is, Oscar Wilde always says, he was asked, how did your big day of writing go? And he goes, yes, it was very good. It was very good. This morning I added a comma. This afternoon I took it away. So we love doing exactly that at Tectonic. But there's something amazing about our dynamic that it's we will fight with each other. We will really fight over that but and that and. Amanda and I have had it out over so many things, but it is rooted in this place of love and passion, and we want everybody in every chair to be able to see themselves in that play in a way that is confronting.
Yeah.
That play is about the perpetrators of the Holocaust, and I think if you leave that play not questioning how you are susceptible to being a perpetrator in some form or fashion in your life, then you have not done the exercise of that play. And so there's this shared trust, passion that allows for us and different generations working on a show together to say, actually, I think that my generation might be turned off by that. How can we get the thing that you want while also making sure that it's reading to the widest possible audience and allowing for everybody to do the exercise of the play? And so at the end of the day, it's we might have fought over a butt for 3 hours, but then we'll have a little bit of chocolate and just laugh our butts off and go. In every city we go to, we end up all jumping in the pool with our clothes on, and it's that kind of collaboration. So that's
so fun.
There's something that
should be more of that.
There's something that you're saying that I think which relates to our event today is just how rooted in relationships dramaturgy is.
Yes, a love letter.
But but it is that getting to know the artist, getting to be in relationship with the piece, and particularly ones that take a long time or many productions to develop, right? And they sort of go away in your life, and it's ongoing. But that particularly for me, getting to know the artists I'm working with, and and the piece over time. That the dramaturgy lies in there.
Absolutely.
Right, and all of those connections, and the people who make it, and the things, and the new things that come in, including relationships with our audiences too. Right, or source material, you know, living or documents or whatever.
I mean, the wild thing with the source material,
it's all sort of choreographic, the way that we relate to all these things.
It's actually interesting you bring up the source material, because especially in something like the Holocaust, every day there's a new piece of scholarship coming out about it. So you have to be in conversation with not only where it was when you started the piece, but now perpetrator studies is much more en vogue in, you know, the Holocaust scholarship world than it was when we first began the piece. And so we have to stay on top of, you know, we did a book club where we each read a book about perpetrator psychology. And we thought, okay, which of our characters sort of can embody each of these things, so we can show all of the different ends. And in addition to working on some of these historians' separate projects, honestly, the thing that I'm most proud of the whole thing is, you know, I end up in these like very niche Polish documents, and I have my phone out into the like translate app, you know, just trying to read through in like in English, and there was a line in our play that said, you know, none of these women were ever brought to trial for their work as Helfrieden, which is you know, like the stenographers and whatnot of the SS, and that came from a historian. And then I found this weird Polish document when I was doing some work for the 60 Minutes piece on the play. And I was like, okay, I totally unearthed this from like the deep dark web. And I showed one of our historian collaborators, and she was like, yeah, never seen this before. We didn't know this. This wasn't like knowledge that the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum had. And you should all know that your team has brought new knowledge to the Holocaust scholarship community. So this sort of relationship between historical dramaturgy and historians and museums and whatnot, I'm really interested by that relationship and how we can bring
Archival.
That knowledge out to humans, but also bring that knowledge back into the history as well.
It's still part of the conversation too.
Exactly.
Right, that a lot of historical, where I was trained as a historian, it's like, the historian's relationship with the archive, and then the product will be something that's written that someone else will read.
Right.
But then the human factor can get separated from it. And when you're making some theater with live collaborators for a live audience, for a live performance, it has to mean something tonight.
Yes.
That might mean something different from yesterday.
Yes.
Like that interrogation with it. And so, I mean, these collaborations that are then opening up with the museum, which is another engagement with the you know, community, and like that the community widens, includes theatrical work and exploration too, and that, you know, the legit historians are like, let's keep talking, right? That this is all furthering the work, and the lines of inquiry keep shifting.
It's been hugely rewarding. Yeah, it's incredible.
Are you done?
Yes. Thank you so much to our first panelist.
Thank you,
That was amazing.
All right.
Thank you, Yasmin. Yasmin, hello.
Thanks, Yasmin.
She's still here. They're still here. Amazing. Okay. Thank you, panelists.
Good.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next one. Okay, good.
Yeah, you're great. So I know that we're 10 minutes behind. We're gonna be like that for today, I think. This part of the day is a surprise. I would like everyone, I think, well, first I'll say, here there are Blueberries. I missed it when it was at New York Theater Workshop, and I missed it again at McCarter. You miss things. You miss things all the time. There's so much theater to see all the time, and being a theater maker, you often don't have the financial capacity to see things that you want to see. Speaking of archival work, I want to highlight the career of Patrick Kaufman, who is the Theater on Film and Tape curator. Patrick, do you want to stand? You don't have to stand. Patrick's in pink. Perfect for the love. Patrick dedicated more than 30 years of his life to the Theater on Film and Tape archive, which is an indispensable dramaturgical resource for actors, writers, directors, designers, students, researchers, anyone. Patrick gave his everything to that archive, And that is why someone could go see Here There Are Blueberries 10 years from now if they're not born. They're not born, they can go see the original production. There's a baby somewhere that will need to see that production in order to write the next Pulitzer Prize winning play, the next Tony Award winning play. And yes, everyone just give a big round of applause to Patrick Hoffman. Continuing the work of Betty Corwin and contributing to that incredible legacy. So, yes. Now we will have a little 10-minute break. Sean Palatroni is going to play some beautiful piano for us. Sean, do you want to stand? So feel free to take a little break. Find the bathrooms. There are some that way and that way. And our live stream audience, you can also find your bathrooms. And we'll see you back soon in about 10 minutes. Everyone, we are gonna get back. Let's give a big hand to Sean Palatroni, Emmy Award-winning composer and my good friend. So thankful to have Sean here playing piano for us, his original music.
Yes.
And I just want to introduce this next piece before we get to Mark and Doug, which I'm really excited for. So this song cycle is called Written in Time.
Yes.
This is a song cycle that Sean reached out to me about in the fall and was like, I would love a dramaturgical perspective on this song cycle. Would you listen to it? And it was so much fun.
Yeah.
We had whiskey
Yes.
and talked about Written in Time. It was great.
Yeah.
And so this is one song in Written in Time.
Yes.
Written in Time is a collection of letters.
Yes.
Really, every song is a letter. So it fits our letter pretty well. So we have the amazing Mason Olshavsky. Follow him on TikTok. Many people do.
Do you want to use the music stand there too?
I'm gonna be
Just
sitting down.
stand.
Oh,
Or
okay.
sit. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. So, this is Someone Like You from Written in Time.
I'll give a quick note about
Please.
this piece. The song cycle itself was a concept that I came up with. Oh my God, like 15 years ago. It was when I was a student at the University of Hartford at the Hart School of Music. I was a composition major there. And it sat in, some of these songs sat in the back of my book for ages until I had an opportunity to fulfill a commission for a youth theater company here in New York. And I was like, I have a song cycle, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yes, we're doing it. And they're like, but the music seems hard, and I'm like, I don't care, we're doing it. So each song is a letter, and I went scouring for like, some of them are true, some of them are based on things that have happened to me, but are fictional. But this one is actually based on a real letter, and at the time that I was writing this, it was around the time that Sondheim had passed. And so there was an Instagram that people were posting letters that they had received, like they had sent him fan mail and he would send them back, and they took pictures of it and they were posting them online. They were really sweet. And one of them really stuck out to me. So this is an actual letter that Sondheim wrote, but this is the part of what I imagine the person writing this letter said, and then you'll hear the letter that was actually written back. So this is called Someone Like You. Yeah, let's start it again. Yeah.
I'm moving to New York. At least I think I'm moving to New York soon. At least I'm gonna try. I still don't know what I am gonna do when I arrive. If I Do you have any advice? Of course you do, you're brilliant with advice. But that is not the reason that I'm writing. It's rather that I'm fighting with this notion that the risks I want to take might turn out to be a big mistake. So how does someone like you know what to do? Someone whose work never fails to amaze, built on a line and a musical phrase. How does someone like you make those ideas come through? And do you think someone like me could too? Are you writing something new? Or something of your work that's going up soon? If time has not become a huge constraint, if I don't sound too insane, I'd be honored just to gain a little light conversation with you, to pick your brain. I wanna know, how does someone like you know what to do? How does your music inspire each role? How does a lyric reach down to my soul? How does someone like you write things so thoroughly true? And how on earth could someone like me, do you think I could ever be? Or will this dream never be? Have I lost all sanity trying to find something I'll never see? Somebody tell me. August 9th, 2005. Dear Erin Mark, thank you for the letter and the compliment, and welcome to New York in advance. There will indeed be something of mine to see in September, at least as planned, namely an extraordinarily idiosyncratic production of Sweeney Todd. No orchestra. The instruments are all played by the actors. It goes into rehearsal in a couple of weeks and opens at the Eugene O'Neill Theater in late September. As for brain picking, I'll probably be up to my neck in rehearsals and previews, but feel free to write me again when you get here, and perhaps we can meet. Yours sincerely, Stephen Sondheim. I guess I'm moving to New York.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Jason Olszewski and Sean Palatroni. I think that song is pretty fitting for our next panel, as we have some incredible theatrical mentors and just theatrical giants. I don't like that word, but like theatrical giants are sitting here. And they're gonna just have a conversation in just a minute, and we're gonna get to just listen to them talk. And I'm not gonna be here, so I'll just get to watch. So it's really, I don't know how to introduce Mark Bly and Doug Hughes, if I'm being honest, because they just have so much in their career. I mean, you can read their bios, Tony Awards, Mark.
Leave it at that. Just leave it at that.
Leave it at that.
We're running along.
Running along. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, as a dramaturg. We had Mark will back me up.
We had fun, that's all you need to know.
Great. So we can welcome them onto the stage. Oh no, you're good. Okay. I'm really bad at time.
Fantastic. You did well.
Thank you. My cough drops.
Mark, you wanted to say something.
Yes. Thank you, Katie. We're tedious enough without an introduction. I wanted to say two things. This is an event that The first panel was just extraordinary. I've attended quite a few LMDA events over the years, and I thought that first event was just breathtaking in so many ways. We live lives where things just happen, and then we forget the next day what's happened, and we're living right now in a roller coaster kind of life in news for many reasons. And this event today is about collaboration, and I've been very lucky to be with someone for 36 years. This is my fault, not anybody else's
Yeah, he
fault.
always is pushing it.
My
Come
math
on.
is very bad.
We're hurtling toward the grave here.
We'll be back in 4 years for 40.
Right.
But no, it was my math, not Katie's. At any rate, but I wanted to, we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge, we're celebrating a 36 year, but there have been so many other dramaturgs who have been great collaborators that we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge. Doug Langworthy, for example, a major, talk about a giant, who was a mentor of Katie's in the past, and who has left us and left this realm. More recently, Morgan Jeunesse, beyond a giant, who has affected so many people in so many ways, beyond being a dramaturg is all I can say. And a longtime close friend of mine, Robert Blacker, Canada, the United States, astonishing and kind, generous gentleman who, to this day, every time I go down to the Union Square, where he and I would, about once a month, have lunch. Every now and then, I will see the back of someone's head, and I'll go, and then the sadness will sink into the bottom floor. And so we are here to talk also about and remember those great collaborators as well in the midst of this. So let's
Hear,
not
hear.
forget them. Thank you. And of course, there are many others as well who've left us, but those three in particular. So very quickly, before I turn it over to my longtime friend and collaborator, Doug Hughes.
Doug. Hate Douglas.
I know you do. Just as I hate Marcus. In the summer of 1989, there's your 36.
Oh no, I'm going to hijack this right now.
All right.
I'm going to take care of this.
All right, you take care of it.
Because
You set it up.
my intent here
You go
today
for it.
is to just essentially
for
cast
it.
myself as a supporting player in
All right, you go for
your life as a dramaturg.
You go for it.
And I just am going to, I was a drop-in visitor on many occasions. And yes, in that summer, but I will cue it up this way by saying that in 1989, I was working as the Associate Artistic Director of the Seattle Repertory Theater. It was a great job, and it was essentially where I learned a little something about directing. And I came home from lunch, and I came back to the office from lunch, and I picked up a pink message slip. And the message slip said, "Would you be interested in directing Harvey at the Guthrie Theater in Rep with Uncle Vanya?" And I thought it was a prank. It was it didn't sound, because it was the Guthrie and the Liviu Chule, and they were doing Buchner plays, and they didn't just do, Wojciech would have been too easy. I mean, they did, Leon Lena and, Danton's Death. No, that's child's play. Joanne Acolytus. The brilliant and incredibly loving, one learned, but kind of forbidding at first, Garland Wright, great director, another fallen comrade. But I had the guts to call the number, and I recognized Mark Bly's name. And I have to confess that at that time I had never worked with a dramaturg. Just horrible admission, especially in this room. And I'd heard all about Mark Bly, and I was kind of resentful and terrified. I thought, first of all, dramaturg. I didn't, the Germanic nature of that word and the hard G on the end. And I thought, he's going to dramaturg Harvey, you know? And I thought, wow, all right. And even I thought, gee, I don't know Harvey. It's kind of puff and everything. And I called back and I reached Mark Bly, and within seconds on the telephone, and certainly when I flew in there to work on casting and everything, I found this extraordinary man who had, sprung up from the fields of South Dakota and had just seemed to know everything about the realm of the theater, of drama, about how a play works, about how a play could work better than it is currently working. And I suddenly fell in love, I'll use the theme, with this guy and with the phenomenon of doing Harvey at the Guthrie Theater. And Mark there was so much to get into about the show that Mark led me to. And I don't know, take it from there, Mark, if you wish. That Mary Chase was this extraordinary woman, and that play was a kind of fantastic folk tale, American folk tale, a kind of one-off. This wonderful journalist, her career was largely in Colorado, and something I read, that I think and something Mark sent me, was that she was deep into Ovid. She loved Metamorphosis. And she was interested in that kind of transformation on the play. And I'll never forget a sentence that I came across. It was a direct quote from a newspaper interview. And she said, "I'm interested in writing plays that dissolve the horrible solidity of nature." I thought, wow, all right, I'm in. And so we went at it, and we took that play extremely seriously. And I also think we learned, thanks to the Mark leading me through things, that the play's reputation had been, I think, affected greatly by its original production. And you can go back and think, which stressed the fact that the central character was a drunk. Yep. And we decided, no, he's sociable, but he's not an alcoholic. There's no evidence of that. He just has a kind of vision. So onward, yes. Mark. Turned out well, gotta say, it turned out well.
It turned out very well. Great introduction. I have to say, our sending that message and that little pig slip, yellow slip, whatever it was, I too was a bit afraid that, calling someone and saying, would you direct Harvey? I was afraid I'd get back a fast no, but we didn't. And coming in contact with this person, it was fantastic to receive this kind of energy that immediately said, no, I'm not going to treat this as a chestnut. And it's hard to time travel back, get in a Doctor Who TARDIS and go back to the 1980s and understand that was a play that was sort of done around the regional theater, the resident theaters, colleges a lot, as this play, this is a surefire hit. This will bring in the audiences. And a Guthrie theater, that's not the plays. That's not the play that you do at the Guthrie. And we decided to do it. and I don't recall why, doesn't matter. But we had a company that could do it. We had a terrific company.
Yeah, they were very good.
Fantastic company. And, but we decided to do it. And we decided it was not a chestnut, that there were some things in it. And Doug immediately embraced that. And I have to just sort of like hang in there with me, if you will. I was a bit of a snob, I have to admit, coming out of this.
I kicked that out.
Yeah, he kicked that out of me right away. God bless him, that Irishman. I was a bit of a snob coming out of that institution in New Haven. I won't say the name of it now. And I was very lucky. You know, it's one of those things. Every now and then wherever I've been teaching or at the Kennedy Center or wherever, every now and then I say, if you're lucky, there'll be some angel that will come and touch you and at those dark moments and help you through that moment. And coming out of that place in New Haven, I was very lucky. Oh my God, I got more degrees working at the Guthrie in the early 80s, working with this astonishing Romanian artist, Liviu Ciulei, and then Garland Wright. Liviu Ciulei, if you don't know who he is, look him up. To my point, and connected to this chestnut that many people considered a chestnut, we didn't. My God, did we wrestle with it. I mean, we wrestled. Liviu taught me an amazing lesson, because I was a bit snobby. Mr. Yale, I'll say it. He said at one point, early on in my stay at the Guthrie, starting out as a dramaturg, he said, Mark, in the 1940s, my father built me, he was an architect, who built many bridges across, prior to World War II, had built many bridges across Europe, Eastern Europe. And then, of course, World War II happened, and in Romania, the Communist Party took over. And suddenly, he was demoted because his father, was not in. And he had been previously the artistic director, and suddenly he was no longer the artistic director. He was merely an actor in the company. And for 12 years, he was not allowed to direct. And finally, at a certain point, they said, well, he is very talented. He should be allowed to direct. So Liviu decided to direct a new play from the West, The Rainmaker. That old chestnut. And the audiences, and the Communist Party thought, oh, that's just a piece of fluff, no problem. The audiences came and watched this tale about the drought of a human being, the drought, in effect, of a nation in the Depression era, and they wept because they understood what a drought was, personally and nationally. And the Communist parties realized they'd made a big mistake. And when Liviu told me that flushed away a lot of my snobbishness about chestnuts. And so when this artist arrived, we had a synergy, and we connected, and we were ready to work. We were ready to roll up our sleeves, and we were ready to talk to the actors. We were so ready.
I really expected somebody with a Bertolt Brecht haircut and steel rim glasses and a full-length leather coat and a chain smoker, and it was marvelous to meet somebody who knew lots about baseball and did not seem, I joke, but it did not seem in the least snobby, and I think we got to the heart of something.
we have a lot more to cover, but I want to read something that Doug said, and that I put in the program, which I think is incredibly to the point about what ultimately the production became about. Director's note. In my first discussion of this play with Guthrie dramaturg Mark Bly, the word subversive must have occurred a half a dozen times. In its good-natured and forgiving way, this play challenges enshrined American values of sobriety, respectability, and responsibility. Its subversive spirit is, I think, the piece's secret ingredient. Harvey and Elwood offer audiences an antidote to the work ethic, an evening's respite from the tyranny of schedules and obligations, of shoulds and musts and progress. Dan,
I like the second paragraph. I like the second paragraph.
Well, then go ahead. And
No,
read
no, no,
it.
you read it.
You can pass it around. So that was the beginning of our relationship. That was in 19.
And what it had, I take great credit for the fact that it went well enough that, in a way, I lured Mark to Seattle,
Yes.
where I was, as I said, the associate director. My boss was Dan Sullivan, and it was a great place to be at that time. There was a kind of small company of extraordinary actors. Actors could really make a living and do things like own houses in Seattle at that time. And we and you know, I could work every day. I was always directing, which I certainly wouldn't have been doing had I stuck around in New York in my 20s. So you know, it seemed wild to a lot of people that I would go off to the wilds of the Pacific Northwest, but it was the best decision I ever made, and it was marvelous to, you know, kind of covertly lure a colleague there, because we were looking for a literary manager, and we began to work on a lot of productions together. I think the very next thing we did was Measure for Measure.
Yeah, Shakespeare.
And I had never done a Shakespeare before. I'd done only new plays in New York. And I'd never had the pleasure of working with a dead author. And it was such a, and I still don't understand my hubris, but this sort of thing happened in those days, that I decided, yeah, and I'm gonna do it. We'll do it in the small house, the studio theater, and I'm infatuated with the play, and I'm going to play Claudio, you know, and you know, which you know, I thought, I don't know, sentenced to death for fornication, I could handle that, and so Mark was out front a lot while I was you know, working in the play, and I do remember very well, you know, if those of you who've worked on it, you know, it's sometimes classified as one of the problem plays, or that classification used to be in favor. But the fifth act, and particularly the final moment when the Duke proposes marriage in public to Isabella, who's been through this ordeal, and how is it solved? She never replies. She does not say, no, thank you. She does not say, yes. How do you find a way to end the play satisfactorily? There's certainly productions where there's a kind of matrimonial tableau at the end of that, but that just seemed weird and wrong. So Mark and I had a talk about it. Maybe that would be of interest, I don't know, to talk about.
I guess we've gotten to the point of the tech before the first preview, or something.
Probably so, yes.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that, well, this happens all the time, where you get to that point, there's some scene where, you know, in a play where you work on it, and you go, oh, let's go on. but you can't go on.
It's the ending.
It's the ending of the play. And
Yeah.
and we got to that moment, and I don't know, we had a couple hours left in the rehearsal, and I know you were very frustrated. You'd been struggling with it and battling with it. Plus, you were Claudio. My God, it was all of those things.
Damn good in that.
And he was damn. By the way, he was damn fine as Claudio. And and he said, let's just take a break. And he came up the staircase and he looked at me. And he was so frustrated. You didn't quite say, "So, Mr. Yale, solve it for me," but I could sense that. I could sense that.
Did say something like that, yeah.
But he's more gracious than that. But I felt, it's time for you to deliver, and
That's right. You were new then. That's
I was
right.
new.
You had to prove yourself.
We're paying you a lot of money. But I felt, in some way, I should be able to solve this, and I looked at Doug, and I felt a little helpless, and he said, "Well, I'm going to the bathroom or something," and I remember just sitting there, honestly, just feeling helpless, and I suddenly relaxed, and I had this, the script in front of me. And of course, I don't know, pulled some damn thing, and some volume of something, and started thumbing through it to look, looking at footnotes. And then I realized, wait a minute, I just put it away, and I started looking at it. And then I did this thing. I went to this attic that I've always, when I've been in trouble, I always just relax. And I go to this attic in my mind where I just put everything away and I just relax. And I sort of just sat there with the script. The rehearsal hall, everybody went away. Even you, Doug, went away. And I relaxed and I just looked at the page in a different way. And what I saw was 3 times the Duke says, "And will you marry me? Will you marry me? Will you marry me?" And 3 times she says nothing. And that's not an accident. Problem play? I don't think so. Shakespeare knew what he was doing. And when Doug came back in, I quietly said, "Doug, that's where the secret is. She is, in her silence, telling us no." And you take it from there.
Well, then, but yeah, she was doing that, but we still had to end the play.
We started,
and
I don't know how much more I told you.
And but she, it was fantastic to just have that statement of something very simple, very plain, and I thought, well, she's a nun, and in about 4 minutes, I staged it where she says no, she is silent, she offers no reply one last time, and then everybody on stage exited. And she just knelt down and began praying. And I liked that.
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
And
It came directly from the kind of conversation that I guess, we've been able to have for nearly 40 years. You're so, Mark just spoke so interestingly about relaxing, and it was so great to hear Amy Seidel talk about the environment at Tectonic, which was, one envied the sound of that so much because you're so often feeling pressed for time. Yes, how much time do we have left? Mark was always fantastic about lowering anxiety so something could happen in the room. And not only marvelous about the play and how it operated, but also fantastic with the actors. I think in some way Mark and I both agree that, do people come to the theater to see plays? Well, not at basis. They certainly don't come to see the work of directors. I'm serious. They really don't. What do they come to see? They come to see actors. They come to see human beings at a certain amount of risk in front of them, making that leap. They are the ones, they're the last people on the bucket brigade. Everybody else has been hoping they'll do something about the inferno. And I think that Mark really understood what actors were all about and how they met a role. And, he certainly took me through that company at the Guthrie, which I, for the most part, I kind of inherited when I did that production of the Mary Chase. And how they operated, how they worked, how work should be tailored. And he began to have that same kind of relationship with the company in Seattle, and looked at particular gifts of that company. They were great at kind of mad, chaotic comedy. And we decided that we would do a production of The Miser. And I, again, hubris, I thought, I think my French is good enough to translate this. And it wasn't, I did do it. And, but I certainly wouldn't have been able to do a verse play, but that's a prose play. It was a little loose goose, but I could do it. And we realized that there's something, a lot of Molière, the reputation, the performance tradition, kind of has a rod up its ass, or it always felt that way to me. And the plays looked, anarchic, mad to me. And I remember Mark, again, pointing me towards something, I don't know, it was some great French director. I don't know. It wasn't, I don't know who it was. I'm not remembering. But a disponibility ludique, the gift for madness, chaos, something that, again, subversive. And we went about the Miser with a kind of, I think it's always great to have some kind of, what are we doing? Is that what we're doing, or is that something from another production? Yeah. What's us? What are we doing here? Yeah. And what's not us? Equally valid. Yeah. And I think we, decided we're doing children's theater for adults with that play. And
we know how to do that.
And it was good. It worked. It worked. And a kind of the daring required to go out on the limbs that I kept asking the company to go out on with physical comedy, with outrageously high stakes, and I remember addressing the company before the first preview, and I thought, I'm sending these people out to die. They're gonna die out there. They're gonna be casualties.
They'll get medals, but
and fortunately, that wasn't the case. It was a delightful thing to do, and I think, again, Mark had so much to do with cultivating the idea of, okay, well, what would suit? And we had this incredible actor in the company, John Aylward. He never had really a New York career, but somebody who taught me so much, and to have him play Harpagon was great, and for the company to kind of do something from scratch, because the translation was, we tailored it to the people we had. That was a great experience, and then we got into new plays. We had I ran this thing for new plays at the theater, and we found this young guy named Tim Blake Nelson, who was a marvelous actor. We kind of knew that, but he was writing plays, and we did one of his plays. I shunted that off onto another director. I didn't know how to do that play, but then he wrote a play. This is somewhat related to what Amy was speaking of, a play called The Gray Zone, which was based on Primo Levi's essay in The Drowned and the Saved about there's the horrifying predicament of young Jewish conscripts in Auschwitz who essentially became the workforce in the crematoria, the workforce. And I remember one thing that Tim was out there talking about to do this other play, but he was talking about what he wanted to write, and I asked him, well, where did it come from? And he said, I wrote a play based on my family's experience of the Holocaust and Germany and getting out and all of that. And I finished it, 2 acts, and I thought, this contributes nothing to the dialogue about that catastrophe in human history. I've got to write something that might enlighten in some way. And he'd started to work on this play, and he had 1 act finished, and he and I went to Auschwitz, and I don't remember, I think maybe flowers have bloomed there since I was there. It was very gray, grim, late autumn when we went. And he walked with me through it all, and he began devising the, in my opinion, incredible ending. I mean, it is and again, I think Mark was, Mark had brought Tim along, and you worked on Eye of God, another play of his, which I did direct, and the growth of this young writer. I did a play of his quite recently, I guess. Well, not recently, but you take out the lockdown, and it feels recent. Socrates at the Public Theater, but anyway, I just again, there was so much to observe in Mark working with a young writer. Speaking of Socrates, his Socratic method. He's a questioner and not a prescriber, and believes that he asks questions and he doesn't know the answers to these questions. He teases something of the core of a writer's need to write what they are writing, and you suddenly get to see what's required, and again, what isn't required. I think a great, I state the obvious, but you got to keep stating the obvious in our racket. I mean, it's very important that, and I will, the aforementioned, extraordinary Stephen Sondheim, one of the great aesthetic principles for Sondheim was the phrase, reduction releases power. And that is something that Mark has a gift for. Everything is too long. Everything. This event will be too long. And so you know, the person who can enter the room and say, why is that there? Or even more, the person who has lived with the play for a long time and suddenly can say, why is that there? This is a
With love.
crucial, with love, with love. This is a crucial skill. I've observed it recently in Mark, you know, working on a, you know, incredibly interesting, really contorted play. But we might get to that. But then Mark deserted me. He just got the hell out. He was lured back to the Yale School of Drama and left me flat out there in the Pacific Northwest. So you confess right now.
All right.
Yeah.
It's true. I was wooed away mostly because I thought it was time I became an artistic director, and somebody said, well, you could be the associate artistic director, chair a playwriting program, co-chair a dramaturgy program.
All right.
What's
Lay
there
it
not
on.
to like about that?
God.
And big bucks. So
Okay.
I got lured away. But in a funny sort of way, I just have to say this. I don't want this moment to pass. Interestingly enough, we always think, oh, this path takes you away from this path. We will get back to Hedda Gabler, because he ended up at the Long Wharf right next to Yale, and we ended up doing Hedda Gabler. My work with him and with Dan Sullivan has so informed the last 36 years, whatever it is, 30-some years. There was an event, I won't tell names. There was an event, I was sharing this the other day over coffee. There was an event that happened. I maybe had been there a year, I don't even know if it was a year, and he was running
At
this.
Seattle, you're saying?
At
Not
Seattle,
Yale. I see.
excuse me. Thanks for clarifying. Where there was a new play series, we'd I don't know, maybe do a reading workshop,
Yeah.
and afterwards we would have one of those barbaric post-play discussions.
The audience discussion.
An audience discussion, and it would, I don't know, usually last 20 minutes, something like that, maybe sometimes a half hour. And a playwright that I'd actually gone to school with, and we were both very close to and very fond of, we were doing his play. He was not present. I don't think he'd been at the rehearsal, or he had been, I forget.
He had to leave.
He had to leave.
Yeah.
We won't talk about why, but.
Well, I think it's very. I think.
Okay,
it's
I will
very-
tell it. At any rate, I was leading this discussion. It was probably the first or second one I'd ever done. And this was maybe 1989, something like that, 1990. At any rate, I got up and I was, trying to lead this discussion. And I've really not led that many new play discussions at the Guthrie. One of the big reasons I went to the Seattle Rep is I wanted to work on new plays, for God's sakes, after all those classical plays. I loved the Guthrie, I loved Garland Wright, but I wanted to work on new plays. So I was leading this discussion, and people came out, oh my God, firing not from the hip, but from the ankle. I mean, it was really despicable. And after about 10 minutes, talk about prescriptive. Everybody was writing prescriptions and throwing them at me. And I was just like, okay, I can get through this, I think. And out of nowhere, Doug came out of the sleeve and said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's all for tonight. And he was his charming, gracious self.
I always,
He was not
knowing
rude.
when to make an exit.
He was like,
very important.
ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for tonight. And that was it. And I went, Whoa, okay.
I do want to mention that the play happened to be by
I was going to mention
yeah, the late great Harry
by
Condolian.
Harry Condolian and Doug had
just a mad spirit in the theater, a kind of Oscar Wilde of the
Great
80s, and talk about somebody who wrote plays that kind of dissolved the horrible solidity of nature. And his plays were, some of them were genuinely psychedelic. I mean, they were mad and transporting, and I adored him, and he had to leave for because he was dying of AIDS. And I think that might have supercharged my entrance onto the stage there. But those audience discussions were, I don't know what it was about these, people in the Pacific Northwest. But I did what?
So let me finish this.
Okay.
Because
no, Mark. No.
So he did that, and I remember going, "Oh, I'm terrible. I don't know what I'm doing," and yet, Doug, I remember, and after that, I ran these better, and then I went to Yale. I betrayed you. I left and everything, and I went to Yale, and that moment so informed everything I did after that. Stan Vojevodsky, I said, Stan, why do you want to hire me to run the playwriting program at Yale? I've never taught a playwriting class in my life. And he said, oh, I've seen you. He said, you can do this. I've seen you talk to playwrights. And I got there, and I'll never forget, I was teaching this class, Drama 47. It had been in existence since 1927, very famous.
George Perspective.
And I immediately said, he said, how do you want to run it? I said, I want all 3 years of playwrights, all 3 years of dramaturgs. I want the third-year acting class, third-year directors, and third-year design classes. He said, really? He said, before it's been only the playwrights. I said, well, how the hell can they learn anything if it's just them? And the second class, after they'd rehearsed a play and the reading took place, was some pretty good people, like Paul Giamatti, reading the play. The person in back of me was sitting there reading the Friday New York Times and eating on a sandwich. And I turned around and I said, put that away now. And he said, well, I said, no, put that away now. This is now a very famous Broadway director, by the way. I won't tell you who, but he put it away. And the actors looked at me like, the following week, I got up and I very quietly, invoking this man's spirit, I got up very quietly and I just gave a talk about, this is a very sacred moment. The first time a play is read. You think we're just doing a reading? This is a very casual moment. But we don't know if this is the play written before Angels in America, written before How I Learned to Drive, written before Conduct of Life. We don't know that. And we don't know that the actors up there are major actors that will matter in the future. So we must pay respect.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Yes, hear, hear.
I
learned that from him.
I do want to, yes,
Collaboration carries forth even when the person isn't in the room. Presence. Collaboration takes many forms.
Extremely good point, and I think there are so many times when
I'll shut up for now.
No, there's so many times when I have tried to kind of ingest and kind of impersonate you as I've worked. Sometimes I can pull it off. But yes, the audience discussion, I mean, and I know dramaturgs must, are you bringing the clock? Are we out of here? Okay.
There's not going to be a discussion, I'm sorry.
All right. So we're out. It was fun. We ran long.
You're not out.
We're not out.
I'm just sitting.
Oh.
Maybe final remarks?
I thought you were coming to just yank us off.
No, I don't yank.
I was a little
I don't
frightened
yank.
of you.
Well, we
All right.
should-
Yeah, no, I think.
Yeah,
What do you
Well,
want to talk about? Yeah.
that was so.
Hedda
Yeah, we can talk about Hedda Gabler. I was going to talk about something that was so trivial that now I'm embarrassed.
Go for it.
No, it was terrible. After what you said. No, the audience discussion. I mean, dramaturgs, are always just. You must be. You get out. You have to talk. And they have their ideas about the play. And I remember the first audience discussion I did out there was not long before Mark came, but it was this play that I thought was just, and Dan and I just adored it, and it was kind of this volcanic energy, and it was a play about a movie getting made, and I loved it, and I thought it was very funny, and it lay there like a lox in this workshop, and I went out there to talk to the audience. I directed it. And I looked at these people, and they just tore me to shreds, and questioned my moral center. And I looked up in the eyes, and there was a woman that I was going to go out to dinner with after the performance up there. And I thought, okay, she seems to want to say something. She must be coming to my rescue. I'm going to, call on her. I'll get a softball. I'll redirect. She just led the charge against the play. She took it to another level. Just what a disgrace it was. And this is, again, I will say, and it's so interesting that the combat about these things, and that, that's a playwright who's been produced all over the country. That's a playwright whose work has been done at Playwrights Horizons and at Lincoln Center. That's a serious writer for the theater, also a serious novelist. But and there was something he was offering in his early 30s that was just getting ripped to shreds. And I listening today to the beautiful testimony of those who've preceded us here, that the you've got to love these things. Yeah. You got to love them. Maybe they're broken, maybe they're not working. You've got to love them, and you've got to love the people you are working with. And yes. I love you, Mark.
I love you, Bob.
All right, that's good.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Move my cough drops. Move my clock with the bear. And my water. Okay, we are about to take our 5-minute break. I just want to hand the room over to Cindy Sorrell for just a moment to give Mark some more thanks. And first I'm going to give him a thanks. I reached out to Mark in December, and I'm like, I'm starting a holiday. And we had never properly met. I met him in a Zoom bar in 2020 when I was probably not a happy person, but watching the dramaturgy conference and excited to be there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Mark Bly is there. And it was so cool. And so Mark got coffee with me and was just so kind, so supportive of this project. And his support is the reason that it's happening, that we found the money to make this happen today. So everyone give a round of applause for Mark in many ways, a true collaborator. And then Cindy, you wanted to say a few words.
Just a quick moment. That's so important for all of you here.
Oh, yes, come in front of.
Bring my new medal arm with me.
Yes.
So important for those of us here, but especially for all of those people out there. Look around this room, everybody. We want to tell you, we're sitting here with Sarah Freeman, who came all the way from the Great Northwest, from the Seattle area, from Tacoma, our current LMDA president, and contributed to help pay for this event. Because Martha. And here we have sitting, one of my most fun moments ever was a couple of hours in a coffee shop here in New York, convincing Beth Lickers that she should be our next presidential candidate. And what a joy. Another fine moment for me was being board chair for 2 terms and saying to that young man over there, Ken Cerniglia, please come on the board. I would like you to be on my board. And then he became our president. This is how it works, dramaturgs. This is how it works. Katie has something much better than nerve. She has verve. Katie made this happen. She and Mark talked and talked. Mark talked to Jim and I, you know, when Mark calls, we listen. Isn't that right? And he said, we really want to do HowlRound. I said, how much? Because we wanted all of those people out there to get to share the energy in this room. And so I said, please call Brian Quirt, and if Brian will cough up some, I'll match it or better. And Brian came through from Canada. We love you, Brian Quirt, another great board chair who followed me and talked me into doing a second term. Guys, this is how LMDA works. Everybody's special. And Doug, it's what we bring to the table. And sometimes what you bring to the table is your heart, your soul, your education, your anger at what is happening in our world. We have to bring the best entertainment. We have to bring intelligence, as we just talked about, Ken, to the stage to make a difference in this America. And to get to be in this room, I want to tell you, I am so glad that everybody out there who will get to see this on the archives, because this is something that Mark and I have worked on a long time, is archives, and also the Bly Grant. God bless you, Mark, for putting your money where your mouth was. And it was a lot of work, but we love doing it. So here's the deal. To have people like you in the room with us, if we've learned anything today, we have learned, if you're not in the room, if you're not in the space, whether it's a concentration camp or otherwise, if you don't go, you don't know. You don't know. You don't really understand what went on there. I can tell you, we've been to Hadestown. We took students to Hadestown. You have to go in that crematorium to understand. To understand. You need to be in the room. So come to LMDA. We're going to San Diego. We're going to Tijuana. Talk to Sarah, our president. Sarah Freeman will tell you everything you need to know. Be a part. Be a part. Don't worry if you'll be welcome. Bring something to the room with you, and you will be in this group. Welcome. Thank you very much.
And with that, we are going to take a brief moment, five. Sean Palatroni is going to play some more beautiful music, and we will be right back here in 5 minutes with my bear clock.
Or is it the older, the newer one?
Is that lightning?
Lightning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I charge my phone briefly?
For sure.
While we talk. Oh, nice! It's so long.
It is long.
This is a.
Literally at the end.
You should just put it over there so it doesn't
We're
show
all
up in
watching.
photos.
Okay.
Okay.
Safe hands.
Everyone, thank you for staying for our third and final panel. We have incredible panelists in our third and final panel. P.S. Practice is specialized. So I want to introduce Yvonne E.
Hi.
I want to introduce Daniel Nesta. And I want to introduce Heath Saunders. So we're going to go down the line kind of like the first panel. So, Yvonne, you are an audio play dramaturg, or how would you describe it?
I just say, audio dramaturg.
Yeah. What would you say
Just made up.
What would you say the differences between audio play dramaturg and
regular schmegular?
No, like
on the stage.
Like radio play versus audio theater. What's the difference between that? Because you said something about music.
Yeah, so I work on audio plays in general, and I run the Parsnip Ship, which is a radio play series that's been going on since 2014, so before the pandemic. So you can imagine that when the pandemic hit, we were off and running to the races. It was a wild time. And the thing I would often get into kind of like arguments about with like other artistic directors who wanted to collab was they'd be like, this is an audio play. It'd be around the terminology of audio play versus radio play. For the Parsnip Ship, I really like to say we do radio plays because it's the new play we are recording in front of a live audience. I think that's very, it's intentional. We also have live musicians, so I do a lot of curation and matching the themes and tones of the play to musicians, and so that it feels like a very cohesive experience that continues to build throughout the night. And we wrap it up with an interview with the playwright, and we just talk to them about the play, the process to get to page to podcast and hopefully stage. And because of the music and the fact that we do it all live in front of an audience, I feel very passionate about calling that a radio play versus things that Audible does or other audio play platforms do, in which it is not in front of a live audience. It is in a studio, it's at people's homes. It's very similar to recording an audio book, and in that vein, that is an audio play. So for me, the distinction is very clear, mostly in the way I practice doing audio dramaturgy.
Yes. And I didn't say this before, but I have a fun story about the day that I met you.
Yes.
Can I tell it?
Yes.
So, You were speaking at a panel at Signature, and I was there, just excited to be there. Accidentally photobombed Sarah Rule while eating an egg and cheese sandwich by the trash can. Ended up in her Instagram story, and that was really cool. And that's the day that I met you, so that is a fun story. But back to dramaturgy. So, what is something that people might not realize about dramaturgy for audio plays, like the dramaturgy of the imagination you kind of talked about, that's different when you don't have what's in front of you?
The visual. So the reason why I love audio theater, especially, and I try to push it to Americans, is that often Americans think that audio plays and radio plays are dead. They're not. In England, in London, BBC is still rocking. They got new ones on the radio, and I think something that something I find really important in terms of the work I do is to really push the imagination, specifically of American audiences. This is gonna sound really shady. I don't mean it in this way.
You can be shady
but I
here.
feel like often American audiences, and this bleeds into the society at large, is so unimaginative. They're so used to us giving everything to them on a platter for them to take in, whereas they forget to realize that I like to use this example of a red door. If a playwright writes that the door that this person walked through is red, my version of a red door is valid. So is the imagination of your red door. Your red door might be like maroon red door. Mine is a bright red door. But they're still valid, and what's important is that we are continuing to push our imaginations and continuing to sit in imagining new worlds, imagining new ways of being, which is why I say it's kind of shady, because I feel like sometimes we get stuck as a society of going, no, 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 no. And it's often the most unimaginative people saying no, whereas because they haven't, it feels like our society slowly stamps out imagination from when we're little to as we grow up as adults. So you often hear the adults going, no, 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 putting the possibilities, they're squashing that, versus kids, their imaginations are big, they're wide. And what I love about audio theater is that it continues to make that a practice, and it's a very important practice that we all need to continue to develop and really strengthen, especially in these times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like what you said about like children, that it's really like they're ready to do it. It's kind of stamped out of you when you're growing up, and kind of leaning into that is really important and powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they think it's silly that, you're an adult and you're an artist. They say get a real job, all of these things. But those are the same people who are mad that Netflix charges $2 more for a subscription. And that is literally built off of artists. So it's just really important for us to continue to sit and imagine and less editorializing of self, of is this right, is this wrong? Just sit and listen to a story. It really can just open you up to a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And you are a dramaturg, as beyond audio dramaturg, you do all kinds of work. What other kinds of work do you do?
I do a lot of new play dramaturgy. I do a lot of research-based dramaturgy. For a while, I was very much in the mythology dramaturgy projects of African mythology. I'm Nigerian, so dealing with a lot of plays about African gods and goddesses, orishas, and was also doing a lot of work in mythology with for Roman and the Greek gods as well. So. And also just kind of dramaturgy around curation. I also do programming. I'm a producer as well. So my dramaturgy forms everything I do as a creative. It's really hard to separate them, quite frankly.
Yeah. That's amazing. And how can we follow you?
You can follow me at at I am Ivon, IYVON, and I just started my creative services boutique of services as a script development dramaturg. So I help with people on like a monthly basis and developing their scripts to where they need to be. And you can follow me there at Sparked by Ivon.
Yes,
as well.
yes. Everyone can be hired at all times.
Yes.
Everyone needs work. and we'll do beautiful work.
Yes, and listen to the Parsnipship. We have over 50 plays. Most of our playwrights are queer, women, people of color. It really runs the gamut, and many of them don't even write about those experiences because we don't like to pigeonhole people. Again, this is about expanding the imagination. And if you also want to just find out about some new up-and-coming artists that hopefully will win Grammys in 10 years and remember me and give me money.
Yes. Yes. Any... Yay! Incredible. Thank you, Ivon.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now we are going to go to Daniel Mesta, opera dramaturg. Woo! Tell us about opera.
Oh, how much time do you have? Not much, I think.
Not much.
That's what I thought. Okay. So in the 14th century, yes, I'm Daniel Mesta. I'm a dramaturg who's working in opera right now. I'm currently kind of based with Heartbeat Opera. I don't know if you're familiar. But we're running Salome. I'm going to hot-foot it there actually after this. And we'll open Faust in May, so please come. A very small kind of pocket opera company in many senses, but also very much a grand opera company in the sense of the understanding and approach to the art form.
Nice. Yeah. And how did you get involved in opera, like growing up, and like just kind of what drew you to opera rather than you do also more, everyone does everything, but this panel, for the sake of this panel, what drew you to opera?
That's a great question. I do a lot of different types of theater. I end up working on all sorts of things, but I love opera, and it's not so much that I've been drawn into opera recently in practice, but I also begged to be there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pleading and cajoling, turning a little bit into blackmailing and threatening, but through all of that, I got in.
Yeah.
And like any good dramaturg can. And sorry. I'll stop. It's true. And yeah, I love it. I love the feeling that I get when I'm in an opera house. I love the feeling that I get when those elements converge to form this sort of great work that opera represents to me. I think there's something that is very transcendent, and opera has the ability to transport you and connect with you. But I think what is most important to me about opera is the idea that it is, I believe, and unfortunately we don't see this necessarily reflected in the audiences and structures that we have created in especially the United States, but opera is really something that's quite democratic in the sense that there are people of all races, cultures, backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses who will connect to the music that they hear instantly. And it is that connection. I had it when I was very, very tiny. My mother connected to opera very early in her college career, something she'd never been exposed to. But as a young woman, she took a course in opera and classical music, and it connected instantaneously with her. And it was something that she exposed us to, and that's such a sacred journey, I think, for somebody coming to something that when they connect to, they gain access as if they've always known it. Mm-hmm. That's what opera is about. And there are people, what's that amazing moment in Pretty Woman, right? She goes to the opera, right? Absolutely, right? And it is that moment where she, for all intents and purposes, right, is the least refined person in the room, but she connects to it the most because you either get it or you don't. And that's what the democracy, I think, of opera. And I think that's what is kind of the mission we have as opera creators to dig back into and to push out all of this fluff that's come, all of this kind of classist nonsense that's come with the art form.
Right. And then, like, when you imagined, like, opera dramaturgy, just, like, imagine it as an idea, what is kind of different than what you're actually doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my vision of opera dramaturgy was that it would be very similar to theater dramaturgy, and that opera would be very similar to theater in all of these sort of ways. I would walk into the room, I would know exactly what to do, I would understand the structures, I would understand the hierarchy, which is quite different in opera, and I would understand the process. For all of our lack of order in the world of theater, we at least have some order sometimes. But, and it's not that opera doesn't, it's just that opera has a different tradition and it has a different, it's taken a different route to its current iteration. And while there are some things that overlap with theater, there are a lot of things that just don't. So finding a foothold, finding a place in the rehearsal room and saying, okay, I am this, I do what, is so hard, not only to explain to, the singers or the creative team, but also to explain to management, who you're still trying to convince in the first place that they should pay you.
Right.
It's different.
And when we first spoke, we talked about, like, dramaturgs speaking to donors, speaking to fundraising. Opera seems to have taken that in a direction that I feel like theater really should jump on. Hire dramaturgs as your fundraiser. But you can speak better to that than I can.
Yeah, I will do that now. Fundraising, that was not intended to be shady, Katie, I love you. Fundraising, I'm kind of in a weird place, like you said, where we're trying some new approaches at specifically Heartbeat. I was not the production dramaturg for Salome or for our upcoming production of Faust. I'm like a back-end dramaturg, which I think is very kind of unique in that sense. So I am a dramaturg who's been hired after the production's already set in stone. I started, it was in rehearsals, all that kind of stuff, to understand the world of the show, but it's not my job to work on it. It was my job afterwards to kind of do what's essentially a tiny talk back with press, with board members, with donors, with potential donors. And so it kind of, dramaturgy gets married to all these different things. You see people who are dramaturgs who are married to, the communications department, or who are married to, the director in some sense, or who are also, doubling as actors. I don't know, maybe they're in a fantastic production of Measure for Measure. It's odd to see dramaturgy kind of merged with development and front of house work. Which front of house is very new to me.
Yeah.
But
front of house can be wild.
Front of house is wild. Okay, give them all a raise. But it is that sense of having somebody who can connect with people and who can talk about the show to a variety of audiences who are at a lot of different levels. With especially opera, somebody who's never seen an opera before, but they really loved it. Someone who's never seen an opera before, but they really hated it. Somebody who, is a donor who has all of the knowledge and has seen every production of Salome since the beginning of time, and wants to tell you all about it. Being able to connect and engage in that way and sell the vision of the show in a way that, and package the show in a way that a donor will understand. And it doesn't mean that they have to like it. It just means that they have to understand that what we're doing on the stage is important, and that we have more to show you. And I think having and engaging a dramaturg in that way was a really clever move on Heartbeat's part.
Yeah.
And more artistic directors should do it. Where are you watching? Yes.
Artistic directors, hire dramaturgs. I need a new income source this week.
Yes, hire
so
this one.
Hire me. I'm nice. Some of my employers are in the room, and they'll speak to my skills.
It's all true.
It's all true. Yes, part-time work. We're all looking for it all the time.
So that's why you organized this. That's why you were so.
No. But I do need money soon. Okay.
Sorry, we're having too much fun.
Oh
Yes,
my god.
that was so fun. Anything you want to end with, Daniel?
I mean, opera is phenomenal. It's fantastic. Opera's for everyone. And, opera is the way that for me as an artist, I've been able to kind of find something that felt very much like a home to me. And so, when people create and develop opera on the creative end, they are creating these houses for all sorts of different types of artists, who are lodged within that sort of sphere. But they're also creating, when funders and donors create these spaces, it's also, an act of a grand act of inclusion, and that's
collaboration.
what I believe. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daniel. And we have our final panelist, Heath Saunders. Give a round of applause for them. So Heath and I actually met on a project that I was the dramaturg for, and Heath was an actor. And I remember being in a rehearsal room, and Heath made a comment about a song that wasn't quite working at that point. And I was just so excited because I'm like, that actor's really got a smart comment. I want to go talk to that actor and get coffee with them and just hear what they have to say about theater. And I think that it's really cool to have someone who has a perspective on dramaturgy from a different artistry point of view. So I was really excited to get Heath on here. Heath has been in some very fancy shows, Company, Patty.
With Patty LaPlante. Patty was in that show.
Great comment.
Yeah.
Heath, take it away.
It's funny. It's always funny for me to be introduced in spaces like this as an actor because I feel like
you're also a dramaturg. I want to make it very clear, Heath is a dramaturg as well.
Yeah, well, being introduced as an actor is complicated because, as we all know, in the practice of putting a piece of theatrical writing onto the stage, the actor is actually sort of the last bastion of defense. So they're actually not often involved in the conversations about dramaturgy in the same level or in the same way. But the reality is I sort of accidentally became an actor. I never meant to be an actor. I'm a composer of musical theater first and foremost. I happen to sight read music incredibly well, and this is why new productions have me work on them. They were like, oh my God, you can sight read that show without any rehearsal? Please come and do our 29-hour reading. There's 25 songs. And I was like, okay, great. That is quite literally how I became an actor, that I fell from job to job to job into acting as a career. I consider myself first and foremost a writer, and when I think of a writer, I think a writer is first and foremost a dramaturg, because dramaturgy is nothing more than the act of adapting something to the stage. However you're going to do that, whatever system you're going to use to do that, however that it's going to be sort of embodied on stage in some way. The dramaturg is a specialist in that process that can be manifested as a historian, it can be manifested as a director, it can be manifested as somebody who is obsessed with opera, who understands radio plays. You're defining things for the world of the adaptation to the stage, which I actually love. I want to talk about this radio play distinction because that is deeply interesting to me. The act of something being live.
There will be a reception.
and boy howdy will I use it. I hear there's alcohol there too, so huzzah. But this is it's funny to be introduced as an actor because it gives a sort of story about what I do that's really not accurate. And I'm on this panel as specifically as a diversity dramaturg, which is a phrase that you probably haven't heard, mostly because I made it up. And what I use diversity dramaturgy for, what I believe it is I'm using dramaturgy as a tool to tell stories about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So because dramaturgy is specializing in the stories that we tell in embodied spaces on stage, I can use those stories to apply them directly to the stories we tell by who we hire, what bodies are in spaces, what those bodies are in relationship to each other, which is the hugely important thing that people tend to ignore in this process, which is to say, if you put a black body on stage alone, it means something different than putting a black body on stage with a white body next to it. Those are two different events for the audience who's watching them. It changes when the audience is black, it changes when the audience is white, it changes where the audience is coming from. All of these things bring context to the experience of enacting something on stage in that moment of performance. So, I basically used my history of making shows happen, writing them, and my passion for diversity, equity, inclusion, and my training in anthropology and linguistics, put all of these things together and said, I can help you tell a better story with the bodies you're using. My job, when I come in as a consultant on a piece, wherever this comes in this space, I think of my job as helping people feel good about the choices they're making with the bodies they have on stage. What this means, practically, an orchestra has different sections of musicians in them. We have woodwinds, and we have brass, and we have strings, and we have all of these things. Words operate like music. If you play a melody on a French horn, it sounds and functions differently than it played on the same melody on an instrument like a French horn and a cello, which have the same ranges. They can say the same notes. They can do all these things. They can be in relationship to other things. They sound different. I consider myself an orchestrator. So if you come at me and you've composed a play, I'm going to help you orchestrate that play by talking to you specifically about the instruments that you use on stage.
Amazing. What is what is like the most important thing that you feel like you value when you work with a collaborator? What makes you feel like you connect with a collaborator? Where do you feel that love?
Oh, what an interesting question. I think, I mean, any collaboration is about conversation. So listening and having an opinion are the two things that I find most important. Mm-hmm. I think that listening just to like be present is not enough on its own, and having an opinion without listening is a waste of everyone's time. Right. So I think having conversations with collaborators who have something that they are trying to do, so that we can have a real conversation, that we can have a real repartee about how to best execute that idea. That I think is the most important thing in any given collaboration. I'm looking for people who are trying to do something, mm-hmm. rather than just trying to ask questions, which is also important. Right. but I like
yeah, you can have your preferences.
Yeah.
I like that answer. As far as like projects coming up, is there anything you want to plug? Anything?
Oh gosh. Anything I want to plug? I'm working with Prospect Theater next week. I'm doing their Jump Cut series, which is on the 20th. That'll be fun. As an actor, I'm doing Love Life at Encores, which is a delightful thing to be involved with. I mean, Encores is like re-excavating old musicals, is just scratches all of my nerd self. Mm-hmm. And Love Life of the Kurt Weill, this sort of classic, sort of lost Kurt Weill, but not lost in the sense that it's gone, but lost in the sense that no one does it. It's really sort of beautiful to chew on that new thing. I'm going down to Oslo Rep in Florida to do Jesus Christ Superstar again, because I do that show a lot. And then I run a tech company, which is called Spectra.Theater, which is a thing that is what a cocktail hour is for, if you want to hear about that, because it is a theatrical data company concerned with how we collect and manage IP, which I think is one of the greatest problems facing live makers today, but is a whole complicated rat's nest of opinions that is just fun. So that's not a panel conversation, but a personal conversation.
A reception conversation.
A reception conversation.
And we are
if
going to
you
have
will.
a reception just about now.
Thank God. I deliberately made that connection. That's storytelling. Thank you.
I am
That's
so
dramaturgy.
And that's dramaturgy.
I'm so thankful to all three of you. Talk to them about their work. It's exciting. I wish we had time for more. I want to hear more. I also want to get people some drinks.
Yes.
And then you can talk to them still. You can ask them the questions, and I won't be asking the questions, and that'll be fun too. As far as our reception, I want to give a big shout out to Trish Razian and International Cocktail Consultants. Trish is in the back. Trish is one of my best friends, and she is essentially a dramaturg of drinks, is what I like to think of her. And then I want to give a big thanks to also Susan, who's helping out. Susan is in the back. Thank you, Susan. Big thank you to Philip, who's been taking photos all night. Thank you, Philip. Designed our graphic. Thank you, Philip. Big thanks again to all of our donors. To Mark, of course. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Beth Blickers, who was here earlier, who gave amazing advice at the beginning of this. Thank you, Ken, who's the first person I told about this idea and said, sure. 2 days after his Broadway opening. Sarah! Oh my gosh. I said, Sarah is the LMDA president, and she is here. She traveled here, so. Shout out to HowlRound, shout out to Transcend Streaming Company. Personal shout out to Ryan McCurdy, who gave me my first dramaturgy job. I moved to New York for Allison Horsley, who was my dramaturgy professor in college. My first class in college was dramaturgy with Allison Horsley. And also to my mom, because she took a lot of phone calls yesterday when I was feeling stressed. I think I've thanked everyone. Thank you to the panel.
Bravo, Amy
The drinks are all signatures of letters. I believe it's sentimentally strawberry Americano.
Word.
Yours truly.
Word.
Love NYC Dramaturgs. But what are the titles? You'll find them. Trish knows them. There's menus. Enjoy. Thank you for coming. Thank you to Sean. Thank you to Sean. Music over there, Sean. Thank you to Liana. Okay, it's done.